In this video we are going to make sure that our background is infinite, and we're also going to animate our dragon. So to make our dragon animated, we simply have to go to the sprites, find the dragons, and then find any of the dragons, let's say the red one if you're using the red one, and then find the one called fly body. When you have that, you select all of them and you drag them into the scene. Then it asks you to create a new animation, and we're just going to call this one fly_red. This will create an animator and an animation. These two needs to be put into folders, so let's create a new folder called animations and a new folder called controllers. So if we go to the sprites and go to dragons again and open the red one and fly body, we'll see we have this body controller and the fly red, and the fly red can be put into the animations folder and the body can be put into the controller, because this is an animation controller that are used for animating stuff. This body can be removed from the scene, because when we dragged all the sprites in, it created this new object and we don't need that. And we can actually just rename this one to player controller. This is our player controller. With that done, we can select our dragon and we need to find the body. So the body is this one right here. Select the body and add an animator component. An animator component is used for animating the sprites, and we need a controller, and before, when we create the animation, it created a controller for us and we can just use that. So take the player controller and drag it onto there, and now when you play the game, the dragon is animated, as you can see. Now he's flying. He's using his wings for flying. Okay, so that's one part of it. The next thing we have to do is to make sure our background repeats. And to do that, we can simply just duplicate our background here. So right click on the background elements, create an empty and rename it to BG1, for example. Then you take everything hills, ground, not sky, avoid sky and clouds, and put it under BG1. Then you click on BG1 and you click on Control D to duplicate it, and then you rename it to BG2, and then you select the move tool and then move it all the way to the right, like that. So now you'll see the bottom background here fits fine. It's okay. The line, I mean, on the grass you can't see there's any gap, but up here on the hills you can see that there's a hill walk going into what is called a tree, and you might not want that. So you need to select the hills and you need to make sure that they tile correctly. So if we take the hills and take the size and width and drag it a little back, let's see here. Let's just pull it up so it's easier to see. Just like that. See, we need something that goes down. We need to put it up to here or something. So we just take the width and move it back, just like. See, this is the part there. So actually, you should put it to here so it fits with this hill starts right there or something. So we just take the width and pull it back around there. Then we take the hills and move them back down, just like that. And then of course you pull them all the way to the left first. There. Okay. And then you take the hills over here, the new hills on BG2, and pull them all the way to the left so that they fit. Oh, where was it? Now I lost my place. Let's see here. It's right there. Okay. So there's still something. If I select this one, I can move it, I guess. There's still something missing, as you can see. So you need to make them a little smaller. So let's try again, like these hills. There, I guess. I guess that's fine. Nope. The hills up here. Sorry about that. Let's see. So 57 maybe. 7.6. 0.7 is too much. 0.6 it is. So 0.6, and then you can take and move them together again. Or actually, this one should have the same size, right? So if this one is 57.6, then this one down here also needs to be 57.6. And then we can move them together. There we go. Okay, so now they are overlapping and it looks like they're one background, right? Just make sure they have the same height. Y minus 457. Here, minus 46. So just duplicate those things. So the height is the same. And now you see there's a little gap here. So just select the hills, both of them, and then move them a little to the left so that they cover the start of this. So we need to make sure that the backgrounds down here move as well. And we can do that by going to our game manager. You see we have everything here that needs to move. We actually need to have 10 elements now. And all these elements needs to be there. So we have 5. And then we have, let's see here, what is this actually? Let's see, large. Oh, that's the clouds, okay. So we need to put all the clouds in as well, of course. So select the game manager, and then we take from there and put everything in there, and ground, and then small, medium, large. And these already have the right speeds. So now when we play the game, everything is moving. Let's pause here and stop maximizing so we can see. You see the whole background here is moving at the same speed as it did before. But now there's just more. However, this background is going to run out at some point, so we need to take it from here when it gets out of line of sight or out of the screen. We actually need to make sure that we take it and we pop it back to this position right there, so that it, when we play again, it keeps running over and over again, so we get an infinite background. So how do we do that? Well, we need to create a script for this, and we actually already have a script on all of these. And so we actually need to create a reset trick out here. So let's try to do that first before we do anything with scripting. So create, let's say empty, and add a component to that one called a box collider. 2D. Remember, it should be a 2D, and you can simply just set that one as a trigger. Then you take the size of it and just expand it so that it takes up all the space here, so that everything actually can hit it. You can move it a little closer if you want to. You can also make it a little wider. So let's call this one reset trigger, and then I would like to add a new tag. Let's add a tag called reset, and also make sure the tag is selected on it. And then I would also like to add a new layer called reset as well, and we also put that one in the reset layer so that all the other objects won't collide with this one. So to make this work, each of the background elements needs to have a reference to a neighbor. So what do I mean by that? As you can see here, this background here, or this ground, it needs to know about this background so that when it goes out of bounds, it can snap, if I could select the right one, it can snap back to this neighbor over here. So we need to make sure that the backgrounds know about each other, and when this neighbor is moved out of bounds, it needs to snap back to the other neighbor because that one is behind it at that point. So we need to make a function called snap to neighbor, and we need to call it whenever they get out of bounds. So let's open up our script. Let's open the background script. It's a great place to do this. So right now we only have a move function, but we are going to populate the script with a lot more soon. Let's see here. Let's make a public function called snap parent to neighbor. It could also just be snap to neighbor. I don't know, snap to neighbor. That makes sense. Okay, so what are we going to snap to? We need a neighbor, so we need to make a private transform here called neighbor. So neighbor, and we need to serialize that field. so that we can see it in the inspector and assign whatever is this neighbor. So we need to make sure that, yeah, what neighbor we need to snap to. Okay, what else? Then we simply have to say transform the position, not that, dot position is equal to new vector2 neighbor dot position dot x transform dot position dot y. So we're actually just snapping it to the x position. We want to keep our own y position. We don't want to snap up or down. We only want to snap in the x direction and on the horizontal direction, because if we snap on the y equal to the neighbor's position, then it might snap up or down. So we just take that one out of the calculation and use our own y, and then we simply only snap it to the neighbor's x position. This is not going to work right now, because if we snap to the neighbor's position, if ground will be snapped directly to, let's see, the ground over here, that x position is 20, and this ground here is, let's see, okay, I guess it's because it's under a background, so they are based on the local transform. So let's just take them out of these just to demonstrate. You don't need to do this, it's just me demonstrating. So you see the ground here, x is 20.06, and the other ground is 116.96, right? So if this one would snap to 116, well, then they're on top of each other, and we don't want that. We don't want to snap them on top of each other. We need the other background to snap to here instead, over here. So how do we do that? Well, we need to add something called an edge to each of them, and that edge is going to be used as the neighbor. Let's try to add this one again down there and this one up here. So we can try to add an edge. If we click on the ground, right click on it and create empty, you'll see that it gets an empty child. Okay. The next thing we have to do is rename that to endpoint or something. So this is the endpoint on the ground, and it belongs to this ground over here. So we take the endpoint and move it all the way to the right. You can zoom all the way in, as much in as you can, and then take this one and put it right on the edge, just like that. So it just goes to the edge of the sprite, right there. With that done, you need to do the same thing for the ground over here. So you just right click on it and say create empty, and then you simply actually rename this one to endpoint, and you do exactly the same thing. Might also be easier just to duplicate stuff. Okay, move it up to make it easier for us to find it. Endpoint right there, move it all the way to the edge and all the way out there, just like that. So you can actually just duplicate the value. If you select the endpoint you place first, 48.555, duplicate it over there. Oops, yeah, there we go. And then you take the ground and you need to move the same y position, so you can take this one down there, 20.06, and paste it there. Oops, that's not the x, I mean the y position. There and there. Okay, so now we have an endpoint and an endpoint on both of these backgrounds. Now we can use that to snap it to the right position. However, this requires us to be able to collide with the reset trigger. We have a reset trigger out here, but right now we don't have anything to collide with it. We don't have a collider on our background. You can see the problem. If I select my ground here and I just add a box collider like that, that box collider is pretty big, and at some point I would like to have a collider on the whole ground, so that this ground here will be covered with a collider, so that when the dragon hits the ground it will die. And I can't use that collider to collide with the edge out here. So that's a problem, right? I can't use it to collide with that one, because then it will reset right away, because this collider is way too big and it's going to go all the way out here. So right away when we start moving, the collider is going to collide with the reset trigger that is right there, and it will reset instantly when we start the game. So what we need to do is to remove this box collider. we need to select the endpoint and add a component which is a box collider to that one. And then you'll see we have this box collider here. It doesn't matter that it's a little too big, because we're not going to see it. So we can just make it, that size so we can collide with it. Then we select the endpoint and we take the tag and put it as a, we don't set the tag, sorry, we put the default layer as reset on the endpoint. And then we make sure that it is set as a trigger. So the problem here is that our script is sitting on the BG1, on our ground here. So the ground is a parent object of the endpoint, and it's the endpoint that has the box collider on it. So how do we catch that collision in our ground? Well, if we go to the ground and go in here and make a untrigger enter, let's make that untrigger enter 2D, and we want to reset something, so we are trying to call the reset function. So if our collision tag is reset, then we want to reset. And how do we reset? Well, we snap to neighbor right there. How do we snap to neighbor? Well, we need to select the ground. There's a neighbor right there, so it needs an endpoint right there. So BG1's ground needs a reference to the endpoint on BG2, and BG2's ground needs a reference to the endpoint on BG1, so they can snap back and forth. Okay, so now we have a function that should trigger when we collide with something, and we have a collider on the endpoint right there. However, it's not going to work. If I run the game, see that the BG moves. Should I put a faster speed though? See if I put 10 or something. And when it hits the reset trigger, collide out there, nothing happens. It didn't snap back. So why didn't it snap back? So to make the what is called collision work, we need to put a rigid body on the parent, because the collider is down here and we need a rigid body to catch those collisions, and the object that we will put the rigid body on will also handle those collisions, and in this case we want the ground to handle them. So we go to the ground, we select add component, and we find the rigid body 2D. Then we select the body type and put it into a kinematic rigid body. It will also work with a dynamic, but we don't need gravity and mass and all those things, so it's actually cheaper for us to use a kinematic instead. So with that rigid body put on, and we made sure that our script is saved and has the snap to neighbor, well, it should snap back when we run it. So we select the ground and put the speed to a high amount and run it. We might see that it snaps back. So see, then it hits here and then it snaps back. However, let's see if it works correctly. We set both ground speeds to 20. Speed 20, and we simply play the game and make sure that we are pausing right away when they snap back. See what happens. And snap. Okay, so if you take ground 1 and move it up, you'll see that it didn't snap to the end, it snapped to the center. So why did it snap to the center? Well, it uses what is called the transform position, and the transform position is actually based on the pivot point. So we also have to go to our sprites, select our where is it? Back. Sorry, not dragons. Let's see here, obstacles, and we have some not obstacles, backgrounds. Maybe I'm still asleep here. And then we can go to the sprite editor. Well, actually, yeah, we can go to sprite editor, and the pivot point here we can put in the right side, like that, and apply. So now the pivot point has moved to the right side. This also affected how they looked in there. So when you close this down, you can select both grounds again and move them to the right, just like that. Let's see the endpoints. Are they placed correct now? Nope. The endpoints are not correct anymore. So we need to move them back all the way. See, about there, just about that position or something. And then you will take, oh, if you put it at position 0, it will actually have the right position now. So we just go back here and put it at 0. See if that's also correct. Yeah, that seems fair. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is to make sure that they snap correctly. First of all, let's try that. Still at 20 speed. Let's see what happens when they snap now. Boom, there. And now you can see it actually didn't snap at all to the right position. It snapped right on top of it. And that's because I failed when I put the pivot point. Of course, it needs to be on the left side. So instead of right, it shouldn't snap there. It should snap here, of course. So let's select the left side instead and try one more time. If we were moving the other direction, the right would be okay. So now we can try one more time. Let's put this up again. Let's move this one all the way so we can see it there. Right there. And let's take the other one and move it all the way so that they fit together. Let's see if we can find the X. There. And then we have our endpoint. It's now placed in a totally wrong direction. Let's take the endpoint and move it correctly. Zoom in here. Sorry about the mistake, guys. It's okay. Go then put it there. It's 97 point that. Let's just do the same with the other one as well. So now both endpoints are placed correctly. They should be at least. Let's see if we move up the ground. Yeah, the endpoint is right at the edge. Okay. Another thing, of course, we also need a box collider on this endpoint. So add component and box collider 2D. And then take and copy, right-click copy component and paste it right there. Paste component values. So we have two identical colliders. Make sure the ground over here also have a Rigidbody 2D that is set to kinematic. And now we should have the ground at least tiling forever. Let's try. Goes a little fast, but they should be snapping back all the time now without any problems. And as you can see now, the background moves all the time. I think I'm going to end this video here. It's getting pretty long, but in the next video we are going to make sure the hills and the clouds are also respawning or resetting their position when they get out of bounds. But maybe you already know how to do that yourself by looking at how we did it with the ground. And we will also put in some grass and some bushes. We forgot to do that in the previous video, so that's of course also something we would want to do. So thank you very much for watching. Thanks for watching my video. Please remember that InScope Studios is a community founded page, so please consider clicking the support link on the screen to see how you can support me and get something back in return.